What is up, guys? Eric here from Real Film Reviews, bringing you my top 10 films of 2018. Now, I know when I do this video, it always seems like it's a month late. Everyone else does theirs January 1st or 2nd. It's the top 10 films of 2018. But for me, I prefer to wait until the Oscar nominations have come out, so that way I can make sure that I have seen every single Best Picture nominee before I make this list, because I don't want to make this list without having at least seen what artistically are considered the best films of the year up to that point. So I have now seen every single Best Picture winner, and I feel that it's time for me to make this list, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So before we actually get into the top 10, as always, I have a few honorable mentions. The first honorable mention is one that I think might make a few people upset that it's not on my list, and that is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I did enjoy this film. I thought it was really entertaining, but I think for me, the emotion of the story really missed its mark almost entirely. I never really felt sad or happy or anything. I laughed and the film was entertaining, but I wasn't very attached to any of the characters at any given point, and that was really what knocked it down for me. My next honorable mention is Love, Simon, a film that came out way at the beginning of 2018, but was honestly a really beautiful story. It was really funny, it was very entertaining, and I think as sort of a pseudo-teen film, where it definitely was something that young adults and even adults could watch and enjoy, I think it worked really well. It had a great story, and I think all of the performances in the film felt very real. Sure, there were things about the story that felt a little unrealistic and very much like a teen film story, but overall, comparatively to what most teen films are, this one felt real. It was full of emotion, it was full of love, and honestly, I had way more fun with this film than I thought I would. Another honorable mention of a film that came out at the beginning of 2018 is A Quiet Place, the John Krasinski directed and starring film alongside Emily Blunt, his wife. I thought this film was really cool. It had a very inventive type of storytelling. The fact that they had to remain quiet, the fact that sign language and just mouthing of words was used so often. It was a really interesting way to make a film. It wasn't particularly horrifying, but it definitely had some good thrills and a lot of fun suspense. I think overall it's a film that will be remembered for the genre film that it is, but it doesn't necessarily surpass that. It's very good as a suspenseful thriller, a contained thriller, but I don't think it necessarily pushes past the genre that it was in of being sort of like that thriller horror film. And then my last honorable mention is Sicario: Day of the Soldado. This was the sequel to the Taylor Sheridan film Sicario, which actually was my #1 film the year that it came out. I think this film definitely took a hit, being as it lost its original cinematographer and original director, so visually it just wasn't up to par with the first. And then story-wise, it maybe took a few missteps here and there. I still enjoyed the story. Obviously, I loved seeing all of the characters from the first film that I liked so much on screen again. Benicio del Toro is still fantastic as Alejandro, and I love Josh Brolin. I just felt that the film wasn't as good as the first, and while I did enjoy it a lot, I own it already, because of course I do since I love the first so much. I just didn't think it was quite enough to make it onto my top 10 list for the year. My number 10 film for 2018 is Jonah Hill's directorial debut, Mid-90s. This is a film that literally just tells the story of a kid living in California who in the summer decides that he wants to start skateboarding. He's never done it before, it's something that he doesn't really know much about, but he walks into a skate shop and he runs into these kids and he really likes the vibe of it. So he decides that it's going to become his new hobby and what he's going to do. And even though this film is exceptionally vulgar and abrasive, it was such an enjoyable watch. It was a film that didn't try to move away from the truth that it was trying to tell. It was showcasing you what the lives of these kids was like, and the fact that they were all able to come together because of this one mutual hobby. And I really, really loved that. I felt like so many of the performances in this film from people who aren't really trained actors. The main actor, Sonny Suljic, is an actor. He's been in many things. But I think the fact that they were able to utilize all of these people who aren't traditional actors in the film, and they all felt so real within the story. Nothing about this movie felt fabricated or over the top. When you're watching it, it literally feels like you're watching the story of these kids who are just riding their skateboards around town, causing trouble, and making memories. And it was such a wonderful film to see. It was honestly just a love letter to Jonah Hill's childhood, and I think that's so visible when you're watching the film. Number 9 goes to the long-awaited sequel, Incredibles 2. I really liked this film. I think Incredibles 1 is one of the best Pixar films that's honestly ever been made. It was one that I grew up with. I played the PS2 game. I really enjoyed the first film. So when the second one finally was going to come out, obviously everyone had their expectations set pretty high, and I honestly think that they were met. This was a beautiful film about these characters that we already know and love, just moving their story forward, learning more about them, seeing how they transitioned after the first film and what happened. And I really think that this film captured everything that it needed to about these characters to make us care again and remember how much we cared in the past. It's really funny. Obviously, the animation in it is beautiful, and I really think that the plot worked very well in not sticking with sort of the traditional plot that the first one had. Well, the first one obviously had its twists and turns. I felt this one did the twists and turns a little better, and I enjoyed where the plot went in this film, because when you thought you knew what was going on, it definitely continued to sort of turn the story in a new direction, where by the end of it, even though I felt that the climax was a little lackluster, it was still something new and fresh. Number 8 goes to the Wes Anderson film Isle of Dogs. This was way better than Fantastic Mr. Fox, at least in my opinion. I've seen Fantastic Mr. Fox, and it's just a Wes Anderson film that feels like a Wes Anderson film. It doesn't push past the cool aesthetic and fun art style that it has. But I think Isle of Dogs did. This movie, for one thing, is the funniest animated film that came out in 2018. I loved Incredibles, I loved Spider-Man, but this movie is so clever and so funny. However, it's obviously for an older audience. If you showed a kid this movie, they wouldn't quite understand all of the comedy that's in it, but I really loved the comedy. Also, the voiceover performances. They have Jeff Goldblum as a dog, guys. Jeff Goldblum. Like, how do you not love this movie? It's a wonderful story that's adorable and cute, that has these characters that you can so easily get behind and root for, and oh my god, the claymation in it is just, it's astonishingly good. Everything about this film, the aesthetics, of course, because it's Wes Anderson, the script is so great, all of the characters are so lovable and easy to get behind, and you root for them at every different turn, and then the voiceover performances are so fantastic. This movie's script and its cast are so stacked with talent, it's insane. Every single character in this movie is voiced by someone famous, and I loved that about the film. If you haven't seen Isle of Dogs, you really need to check it out. Number 7 goes to another directorial debut, that being Bradley Cooper for A Star is Born. Now, I saw A Star is Born in theaters, and when I went and saw it, it honestly affected me a lot. I really enjoyed the music, I loved the characters, and I thought the movie was very good. In retrospect, looking back on it, I see some more of the flaws that there were in the film. However, I still think this is an exceptionally well-made movie. Bradley Cooper directed this movie very well. The performances in it are so good. This is probably an unpopular opinion, but I don't think Lady Gaga was very good. I thought she was exceptionally good in the musical aspect of the role, and then her acting performance was solid. I think it was better than most people expected it to be, but to me, Bradley Cooper steals the show in this movie. Not only did he direct it, and direct it very well in my opinion, his performance is breathtaking in this movie. It is so fantastic, and I feel like I'm going to say this about other performances on this list, but that's because I think this year, acting-wise, was extremely strong, even if movie-wise, overall, it was a little weak. Bradley Cooper's performance in A Star is Born is wonderful. It's a sight to behold when you're watching it on screen. The music in this film is obviously amazing. It's for sure taking home an Oscar for that. And I think this is a film that while it is an award season darling, it's also very much one of the few films that sort of falls into that category, while also being a very easy crowd pleaser that almost anyone can watch and enjoy. Number 6 goes to the Adam McKay film Vice. I am a huge fan of The Big Short. When it came out, it was one of my favorite films of that year. To this day, it's one of my favorite films ever made, probably, and I feel like Vice is a worthy successor to it. I don't think it's as good as The Big Short, but I will admit, the one thing about this film is Christian Bale's performance. Just as I just said about Bradley Cooper, this film had an extremely good performance in it. But unlike A Star is Born, this film's supporting characters were also all amazing. Sam Rockwell as George W. Bush was so good. Steve Carell was so good. Amy Adams was wonderful as Dick Cheney's wife in the film. I really think this film stands out for its performances and its script. It's always super well edited. Adam McKay, The Big Short was a wonderfully edited film. Vice had the same editors, and I think because of that, it's very clear visually that this film is extremely well edited, and I love the style of the cutaways in it. I really think it's a great style for the type of films that Adam McKay is choosing to make. It's well directed, but as I said, the performances are what stand out about this film. I personally think Christian Bale probably has the Oscar on lock with this performance. Just the amount of body transformation that he did for the role, I think really solidifies the fact that he put everything he had. He really is Dick Cheney in this film, and it is insane to watch. When you're watching this film, there are times where you literally forget it's Christian Bale, which is very hard to do when you're someone as famous and well known as Christian Bale, to get so ingrained in a role that you actually are able to convince an audience that you aren't that person and that you have fully embodied the character that you're playing. I really like this film, and I think the other big thing about Vice, which really surprised me, was that it wasn't just a all Democratic bashing the Republicans film. It very much showed both sides of Dick Cheney as a person. It showed him as a loving father, a good man, but also someone who made decisions that you could politically disagree with, and I think that was really interesting. It didn't just decide to hardline to one direction, it chose to showcase both things, and even though obviously at times it's leaning towards wanting you to dislike him, it very much so isn't forcing it down your throat. Number 5 on my list goes to Green Book, a film that, if I'm being totally honest, when I watched the first trailer for it, I didn't think it would even make the honorable mentions, but I went and saw this film recently, and it's just a beautiful movie. It's just a really, really wonderful film to go watch. I thought I was going to be walking into just a generic feel-good film about these two guys, but what you get instead is this really in-depth showcase of two people from two totally different walks of life coming together to do an extremely difficult task and watching them build a bond because of that. It was really, really wonderful to watch. And obviously that is a great deal due to the performances in this film. Mahershala Ali and Viggo Mortensen are wonderfully talented, and I think they meshed together extremely well in this film. As I said in my review of this movie does not work if there is no chemistry between the two actors in these two roles. Luckily, the two of them seem to work together extremely well, and it made for a wonderful movie that's super funny. It's got a very interesting an engaging story, and a wonderful pace that continues to move forward. It never feels like it slows down. Sure, I had a couple small issues with it, but overall, I would recommend this movie to literally anyone. Just like A Star is Born, where it's like, yeah, you could recommend A Star is Born to almost anybody and they'd enjoy it. You really can do that with a Green Book. If somebody's like, I don't like Lady Gaga, then sure, you wouldn't recommend A Star is Born to them. But I don't think there's anyone on this earth, unless they hate Aragorn from Lord of the Rings, then there's no reason why anyone wouldn't be able to watch The Green Book and like it. Number 4 actually goes to a smaller film that I think will surprise a lot of people with it being this high on my list, and it is Searching, the John Cho film about a father who has had his daughter go missing, and he is doing everything that he can to find her. The whole film is told through screens, phone screens, laptop screens, TV screens, camera screens. It's told entirely through that. So we never see just a straight up camera shot of anything unless it's we're watching a TV screen and there happens to be a camera shot on there of something. I really thought visually this was one of the most impressive films of the year. I understand that there are films that had crazy special effects and all kinds of things like that, but this is a film that tells a heart-wrenching story that you are exceptionally invested in. John Cho, I honestly think, is one of the most overlooked people this year, award-wise. No one nominated him for this film, and it's a travesty because he gives an amazing performance in this film as this father who is truly doing everything in his power to try and find his daughter because he needs to know what was happening. I really, really loved him in this film. And then the fact that they were able to make a film that isn't technically a contained thriller. This is a film where characters are free to go about their business. They can go do different things, research things, go wherever they want. But because we're only able to see it through their screens, their phone screens and laptop screens, as I said, it feels like this very tight, contained thriller where we don't know what's going to happen next. And honestly, this is one of the few thrillers that I watched where when we got to the ending and the conclusion of the story, I straight up was shocked. I rarely have that happen anymore when I watch a film. Even if there's a big twist, I'm normally just like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But this film, I was literally on the edge of my seat watching it, wanting to know what happened to see where it goes. I absolutely loved this film. If you haven't seen it, I'm sure this is a movie that will end up on streaming services. Check it out because Searching is a wonderful, wonderful thriller. All right, we are in the top 3, and number 3 goes to Avengers: Infinity War. I know this is one that I think is kind of a little bit of a weird one to put this high on the list, but I've rewatched Avengers: Infinity War probably 5 or 6 times at this point now. And it really is just an exceptionally good superhero film. And past that, it's just a good movie. It has really great performances. I think by far we get some of the best performances, even from characters that we've seen in multiple films. We get one of the best performances out of Chris Evans. I know it's a weird one, but I think Tom Hiddleston is absolutely just shockingly good in this film. Josh Brolin as Thanos is so good. Everyone is really on their A game in this film, along with the Russo brothers who directed it. And I think that's the key here for me, is they were able to take a film that nothing has ever been made like it before. No one has ever made a crossover film of this many things and put them all together and done it successfully. Because that's the other thing. This film is universally loved pretty much. Sure, there are people that are like, it's just okay, but it's so rare to find someone who's like, I hate Infinity War. And that's crazy that a film with this many characters mashed together is able to be as good as it is. It's got amazing action. The script is super duper funny. Like, so many scenes in this film, whenever I rewatch it, I always forget just how funny certain scenes are. And then overall, the film is extremely emotional. You cannot look me in the eyes and tell me that when you watch this film, there wasn't at least one scene where you genuinely were shocked, you were scared, or you were like on the verge of tears. I saw this film with a ton of my friends. I saw this film twice in theaters, opening weekend, with 2 different groups of friends, and in both groups of friends I had multiple people cry at this film. This film was able to affect everyone because it took characters that we all know and we all loved and was able to transition them into this massive story that encompasses everything. It's the whole universe is at stake, and they're able to put it together to make it feel like a cohesive film that isn't just shoving things all, next to one another to try to make a funny joke when we have Peter Quill standing next to Tony Stark. It feels like a cohesive film that had a lot of love and passion put into it, and I honestly adore it. It's a top 5 Marvel film for me, for sure. My number 2 film of 2018 is Mission Impossible Fallout. I put Mission Impossible Fallout in the same pedigree as the John Wick films, and if you know anything about me, you know that I adore the John Wick films, so it means a lot when I say that I think Fallout is the same level as those films. This movie has been entirely overlooked in every sort of award ceremony because it's an action movie, and action movies never get the respect that they deserve. This movie has so much to it. It's easily one of the best directed films of the year. It 100% should have been nominated for that. I think Henry Cavill's performance is so good. Honestly, everyone in this film does a fantastic job, but specifically Cavill is the one who stands out, I think, in this movie because every action scene that he is in, he just has full control over it. And sure, in the story, there's a few things that are a little predictable, but I don't care because I thoroughly enjoyed this film. I saw it in theaters twice, and both times I watched it, it didn't change my opinion about it one bit. This movie has an amazing car chase, amazing hand-to-hand combat, amazing shootouts. It has everything any great action movie should have, and it is all turned up to 11 because Tom Cruise is a damn insane person who will literally hang himself off of the bottom of a helicopter with no wires attached where he would just die if he fell. No one else will do that, but Tom Cruise will because he's insane, and I love it. I don't care if you think Tom Cruise is a weirdo who has things you don't like in real life about him. That man knows how to make an action movie feel like the biggest thing in the world, and he nails it in this movie. He learned how to fly a helicopter for this movie. That's bonkers. If you haven't seen Mission Impossible Fallout, honestly, you don't even need to see every other Mission Impossible movie. Sure, there's a little bit of backstory that you're maybe missing, but the movie does enough to explain it to you because this movie is insanely good. It has such good action. The amount of adrenaline rushing through your veins when you're watching these scenes is off the charts. I adored this film. It's a top tier action film. I wish action movies were taken into account more at end of the year lists because I feel like they get overlooked so much. But dear God, watch this movie. And my number 1 film for 2018 is literally the exact opposite of Mission Impossible, and it is Bo Burnham's directorial debut of 8th Grade. This was one of the most heartfelt, beautiful films I think I've ever seen made. I went and saw this in theaters, and I don't know if I've ever seen a movie since Boyhood that really, really got to me when I was watching it, because I was able to relate to so many things about it. Obviously, I'm not a girl, so there were things in the film that I couldn't relate to, but all of the things that were about adolescence and sort of finding yourself and pushing through your anxiety was something that hit me so much, and I really, really loved it. It's a beautiful movie that I really hope more people get the chance to see, because I really think that it can impact so many people's lives in a good way. I've always loved Bo Burnham. I think he's one of the funniest comedians out there, but he's also one of the most heartfelt. And I think that comes through in this film, because while it's very funny and has a Oscar-worthy performance by Elsie Fisher, who totally got gypped not getting nominated, and it kind of pissed me off that she didn't get nominated, and that 8th Grade didn't get nominated for Best Original Screenplay, because the screenplay for this movie is absolutely wonderful. It's just a great movie. If you like truly heartfelt, realistic feeling films, check this one out, because I think this film and Mid-90s were the two that I think everyone were looking at this year when they were like, what's going to be the indie breakout hit film? And even though I did enjoy Mid-90s, I liked 8th Grade more. I think that it was more fitting. I think it can touch a lot more people than Mid-90s. Not to say Mid-90s is bad, obviously, but if you haven't seen 8th Grade and you get the opportunity to, please watch this movie. I really think it deserves all the praise in the world. Bo Burnham is extremely talented. Elsie Fisher is wonderful in the movie. All of the supporting cast does a great job. And I really think it's just a small, beautiful story that is able to get you attached to these characters and make you genuinely care about what's going to happen to them. Because this film only covers about a week of a girl's life. It's her moving into high school. And it's so crazy that a simple story like that can be so touching and can affect you so much. But honestly, this movie is just so well made in every way. It has, I think, the best original screenplay of last year. It is so beautifully written, it's so funny, it's so in tune with the times, it's so aware of what it's doing, and I really want more people to see it. So please check out 8th Grade, because it was my favorite film from 2018. Well guys, that's it. Those are my favorite films of 2018. In the comments down below, feel free to put some of your favorites, ones that you think I maybe left off the list that you think deserve to be there. I'd love to hear your opinions, but as always guys, I'm Eric. If you enjoyed the video, please do like it, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you guys later.